WWRR, Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, WMMZ, Berwick, Bloomsburg, Hazleton, WYCK, Plains.
Powered by Mohegan Sun Pocono.
The River, 105 and 103.5.
This is Music on the Menu on the River.
Timothy, where on earth did you go?
Featuring Northeast PA's best artists.
Maybe, never mind. She can move me like the stereo, like a song on the radio. She's an angel in the morning, yeah, that's right.
And now, here's your host, Alan K. Stout.
So I got that going for me, which is nice.
All right, everybody. Happy Sunday night. Welcome to Music on the Menu on the River. Alan K. Stout with you as I always am. Sunday nights, 9 to 10 o'clock, bringing you regional artists from northeastern Pennsylvania doing their own original material. Back in the saddle with D.C. Taylor. D.C., good to see you, brother.
All right, good. Yeah, nice to be back here, Alan.
We have been apart for 2 weeks now.
Yeah.
And I did the show without you for 2 weeks.
Right.
I didn't like it.
Yeah.
And I didn't really tell the audience why, but you said it's okay to tell them why. DC had COVID.
Yeah.
So he was knocked out for 2 weeks for being around the studio. And you're doing all right?
Yeah. It was not for me personally. I'm very thankful. It was not as bad as it as it could have been. And I did good amount of work during from home. Sure. Staying away from everybody, and so it was fine.
Well, I appreciate you still making sure we got on the air and working with me on working from home.
Absolutely.
We'll talk more about that next week when we have a little more time to digress into how that went for you. But we've got a great show for you tonight. We have a special guest on the phone calling in, Justin Mazer, a guitarist from northeastern Pennsylvania that I'm sure thousands of you have seen play at clubs and festivals over the years. He's performed on some great records, and we're going to talk about all that throughout the course of the hour. He's got 2 brand new records that he just released, Discourse and Controlled Burn. He released them on the same day, last Friday, and we're really excited to have him as a guest on the show tonight. Justin, welcome to Music on the Menu. How you doing?
Thanks for having me, Alan. Doing great.
We're going to talk to you throughout the entire record here, throughout the entire program here about the 2 records. But just to get the show started, and we'll get some music on real quickly. I'm reading through, I saw your Facebook post last week. I was on your website. You described the records as, recorded in different ways at different times. And so it wasn't like, I think some artists, they record a whole bunch of songs and they go, oh, I've got 24 tracks here. Maybe I could put out 2 albums. That really wasn't what happened with you. You kind of worked these 2 albums separately and then released them at the same time. Can you take us through that process a little bit of how that worked?
Sure. So Controlled Burn was actually all set, for the most part, to be released in April of 2020, but when the pandemic struck, with all the uncertainty, I had scrapped it for a moment. And also when the pandemic struck, I went into I guess I'd call it a creative zone for a few months where I was writing a lot, and I ended up refining some aspects of Controlled Burn. And in the fall of last year, I was basically left with 3+ albums worth of material that I was sitting on.
Oh, wow. And so that led to Discourse?
So Discourse was pretty much entirely composed and written and recorded throughout the pandemic summer. Our songs that I have had maybe demoed or completed in my mind, but not yet fully actualized, are recorded.
Where did you do the records at? Were they done in different studios as well?
So Controlled Burn was recorded at a location here in Philadelphia called Rittenhouse Records, which is in the basement of an old high school that's been converted to kind of a multifunctional building with different businesses, very similar to the 900 building on Rudder Ave.
Okay.
Controlled Burn was primarily recorded there with a few overdubs sprinkled throughout a few different studios, but 80% of it, 85% of it was recorded at Rittenhouse Records. As for Discourse, that was recorded entirely in my bedroom.
Oh, wow.
With the exception of drums and one song which was also recorded at Rittenhouse Records. So there's kind of an overlap. Like it's not like I finished one and started another, but rather it got to the point where I was just kind of working on everything at once.
Well, I mean, it's just a terrific collection of music, and for fans of you and for fans of guitar and of beautiful instrumental music, it's an incredible body of work to drop at the same time. We're gonna kick off the program here with one of the tracks, and we'll get back to talking to Justin a little bit more about more of the creative process through these records and his work as a musician and a guitarist. But let's get to it right now. This one's from the Discourse record. It's called For There It's Not.
can see best when it's cold. I can hold the ladder best. You are made to climb, but I must say goodbye at last. I must stay behind. I must stay behind. Outside of town, and you loved all them stony walls. I said knock them down, I say knock them down.
Leroy Justice here on Music on the Menu with a song called Three Kings featuring Justin Mazer on guitar. And before that, a brand new track from Justin from his album Discourse, a song called For There It's Not. All instrumental music on these two new records from Justin, the Discourse record and the Controlled Burn record. Now, Justin, so many people from northeastern Pennsylvania, myself included, I've seen you perform. You know, I've seen you down at the Jazz Cafe. I remember popping in to say hello when you did the show down there with Miz. I guess it was Thanksgiving of 2019. You know, I think that was the last time I saw you in person where, you know, it wasn't a couple months later, everything got shut down. But a lot of people know you from those settings and from hearing you, record. I know you've done tracks with Mike Miz and Cabinet. We're going to play some of those tracks later. But how does it feel for you as an artist that has such an accomplished resume and is such an accomplished musician to have records out with your name on them? These are your records. These are Justin Mazer records. How does that feel for you?
Well, throughout the course of playing music, I constantly have to ask myself, what does doing all of this mean to me? And if I ask myself the same question a month ago or 3 years ago or 5 years ago, the answer will always be different. So basically throughout my 20s, I'm 31 now. Throughout my 20s, I think I put way more emphasis on getting out there and touring and traveling and just trying to play with different people, learn different musical vocabularies from just trying to play whatever I could, all the while accumulating all of this different vocabulary and influences and things to the point where this is kind of like the next phase, the new chapter for me, in a sense that I have been meaning to do this for some time. And partially it kind of feels like I'm playing catch up with these goals that I've had for a few years now, where the pandemic has allowed me to catch up and do all that. So the short answer would be, it feels really good.
I kind of figured that your answer would be that, but I also knew that you'd probably have, some more insight into it, which of course you did. One of the things that I noticed some other folks have said about you too over the years, observing you, is constantly evolving, constantly changing your approach or the way you think about music, and constantly a sponge basically. And so even looking internally, it sounds like you're like that.
Well, yes, and I don't even know if this is cool to say, but I've had an inside joke with myself throughout this process of getting his albums out, which is, I think I've managed to reinvent myself artistically like 6 times before I even got to releasing an album.
Well, I can speak on behalf of a lot of us here in northeastern Pennsylvania. We're really happy that you did. Not only 1, but 2. Here's one from the Controlled Burn record. This one's called Balcony.
Molly gonna rule my world. Miss Molly, she make me jolly when she see me every night. Oh, Miss Molly, she does me good and she looks so out of sight. Little Molly, oh good golly, how you do them things to me. Make a deaf man hear what he never heard. Make a blind man see. You make a blind man see. Miss Molly, when you look so fine, you take my breath away. Miss Molly, wanna make you mine. Miss Molly, you make me jolly when you see me every night. Oh, Miss Molly, she does me good and she looks so out of sight. Little Molly, oh good golly, how you do them things to me. Make a deaf man hear what he never heard. Make a blind man see. Set a caged bird free. I want you for mine. Want you for mine, mine. Want you for mine.
Cabinet here on Music on the Menu with a song called Miss Molly featuring Justin Mazer on guitar. And before that, a new track from the Controlled Burn record from Justin, a song called Balcony. He's on the phone with us from Philadelphia talking about the two new records. Now, you described the records as concept records. And that was fascinating to me when I saw that, because when I think of concept records, I think of Tommy or Quadrophenia or The Wall, where a story is told through the songs, like a musical, almost like a play on vinyl. But with instrumental music, how do you go about making a concept album? That's really interesting to me, Justin. Can you explain that a little bit? What is
Absolutely.
the concepts?
So, I could basically take Controlled Burn back probably 3 or 4 years ago at this point, where I had a specific group of 5 to 6 songs that I wanted to be arranged in a certain way where they would all flow into each other. And they all had similar reoccurring themes and melodies, and they had a similar murkiness to all of them. And every time I kind of line these songs up, they put me in a certain zone. And the zone is kind of based off where I was in my life at the time where I was getting these together, where there's a musical concept, but then there's also a deeper personal concept to me. And I also have, around the same time, maybe a little bit later, as I was finishing up Controlled Burn, always been really intrigued about the idea of releasing multiple albums at once. Unfortunately, it just wasn't realistic for that to occur for my initial release of Controlled Burn in 2020. But as I mentioned earlier in the show, you know, I have goals to release more albums this year.
There's a third, so much a matter. Right? There's a third companion too?
Yes.
It's a trilogy, really.
Yes. So in a way, it's kind of a three-headed monster in terms of like how I look at it, in terms of more of the personal stuff. But ultimately, each collection of songs has a very cohesive, you know, musical concept behind it as well. Whereas Discourse, I consider to be more almost like a dream sequence, a little bit more experimental, a little bit more ambient, and that obviously goes along with the artwork for all of that as well.
You know, I'm thinking about it, and you're in good company, because lots of artists have released double albums over the years, but to release two separate albums on the same day, I'm only thinking of two. I'm thinking of Bruce Springsteen with Lucky Town and Human Touch back in '92, and Guns N' Roses with Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, which I think was around '91. So you got to go back almost 30 years, but they are heavyweights in the world of rock and roll and music. So, you know, for you to do that on an independent level, you know, how have your fans reacted so far? I mean, by the time this show airs, they will have been out for a week and a half or so. So you may have gotten some feedback already, I'm assuming.
Yes. You know, to be honest with you, I'm a little overwhelmed with some of the positive feedback I've received. I mean, obviously, it feels a little weird and a little strange to release music under my own name at age 31 after having been kind of exclusively a band guy for over a decade now. Because people could see me perform in the context of other bands and musical situations, but maybe they've asked themselves, like, what is his voice? What does he sound like? What is his whole thing behind the scenes of all that? He can't just simply be a guy who likes to play guitar for singer-songwriters, which I do love to do. So for me, I was it was a very welcoming response to release what I consider to be probably more experimental music than some of the people that are fans of me would be used to, but certainly not all of them.
It's terrific. And, you know, you're right. I mean, I had that curiosity about you myself. You know, I'd seen you play. I was familiar with your work, played songs that you had played on here on the show over the years. But when I saw you at the Jazz Cafe at the Clapton show, I reached out to you shortly thereafterwards. And I said, why don't you come on the show sometime? Let's talk about you. And so here we are, and we are learning quite a bit about Justin Mazer and his wonderful music tonight. Here's another track from the Discourse record. This one's called The Darien Gap Part 3.
Stedet er fortsatt sånn. Hver og en av dem som har gått bort, er hver en tragedie.
I've been dreaming, I've been tossing in my sleep. Been seeing visions and I don't know what they mean. Well, I've been walking vacant streets on endless nights, and I wanna see the lights come on. I wanna see the lights come on. Now you've been holed up in this room for way too long. You pick things up and place them where they don't belong. I can't help feeling that something just ain't right, and I wanna see the lights come on. I wanna see the lights come on. Wanna see the lights come on as I'm rolling down that drive. Wanna feel the autumn splash across the evening sky. Wanna watch you wake up from the way you feel inside, and see the lights come on in your eyes. Now someone somewhere said that you had been unplugged. You can't feel the current coming down from up above. If you put your trust in me, well, I won't let you down, 'cause I wanna see the lights come on. I wanna see the lights come on. Wanna see the lights come on as I'm rolling down that drive. Wanna feel the autumn splash across the evening sky. Wanna watch you wake up from the way you feel inside, and see the lights come on in your eyes. Now there were times when I was broken and confused. I'd watch the sunrise from a shadow's point of view. But something's changed in me, well, I have been renewed. And I wanna see the lights come on. 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 Wanna see the lights come on as I'm rolling down that drive. Wanna feel the autumn splash across the evening sky. Wanna watch you wake up from the way you feel inside, and I wanna see the lights come on. I wanna
Justin Mazer here on Music on the Menu with a song called Invalidation from the new record Discourse. Before that, The Lights by Mike Miz, and that's Justin playing guitar on that one. Before that, another one from Justin, a new one from the Discourse album, a song called The Darien Gap Part 3. We have Justin Mazer on the phone from Philadelphia, one of the area's best musicians. Justin was a part of our Eddie Van Halen special that we did back in October, where we talked to a whole bunch of guitarists from the area about the loss of Eddie Van Halen and how it affected them and his influence, which kind of leads to a question here, in a more general question, Justin. You know, you talked to us in October about how Eddie had influenced you, but who were some of your other inspirations as a guitarist?
Sure, and this is something I could talk about for a while, but I'll try to keep it to more recent interests. Obviously, as I age and I explore different styles of guitar playing, I land myself discovering guitarists that I feel like I should have a while ago. So more recently, I've fallen in love with the guitar playing of Mark Knopfler the last couple of years, and had a profound influence on me. Inspired me to do a lot of practicing and playing without a guitar pick. So if I continue to go back down that path of fingerstyle guitar, who do you end up with? You end up with guys like Chet Atkins. You end up with guys like Mississippi John Hurt. I've dove into the fingerstyle guitar playing kind of thing from Mark Knopfler, which really has nothing to do with any of the music I released. That's kind of what I play in my room for pleasure. But in terms of other guitarists, I've spent a lot of time kind of diving into European and Norwegian progressive rock in the last couple of years, and I've had kind of a renaissance of love for progressive rock. So, all of the staple guys, Steve Howe, Robert Fripp. There's some fairly obscure guitarists I'm discovering that are based out of, Scandinavia that I've touched upon, and I essentially haven't listened to any American music in about a year and a half. For the most part.
When we first went into lockdown last year, around a year ago, middle of April, late March, a lot of musicians start doing the live from home webcasts on Facebook, Facebook Live streams. And I watched one of yours, and it was so good. I enjoyed it. I remember putting a comment on there. Did you enjoy doing things like that? Because I talked to quite a few musicians who really did. How did it go for you?
I mean, that was something that really kept me leveled and in check and sane for the first few months of the lockdown, where I would prepare for it like a gig, although it was me, and it was basically an infant, embryonic version of Discourse, where a lot of the concepts that I fully developed into the songs on Discourse, I was workshopping via those streams, and I was improvising a lot, and that was kind of the point of it. I was workshopping some of these ideas, and if there's any folks that go back and maybe listen to those, maybe they'll hear some of that. But for me, it was just so great because I got the experience, or I got the feeling of actually feeling like I played a gig where I finished the stream, I turn my phone off, and I walk into the living room, and I'm like, oh, my adrenaline's pumping. I'm like, this is the green room, but it's my living room, and it's cool. And maybe I'll do this next week.
And you were able to get feedback from people, too, at a time where we were all so isolated. People would put comments on the songs, little hearts and thumbs up, and it was almost like, I guess, cyber applause, for lack of a better term, And so I just thought it was a wonderful way for us all to stick together with music during those times, and I was curious as to whether you enjoyed them as well. Let's play another one here from Justin Mazer. This is from the Controlled Burn record. This one's called Cloudy Day.
I saw you standing there from across my room. I watched you turn and walk away from me. Those long nights we spent together are gone. All those happy hours we danced in love. I wish you would come back to me. Come back and take me in your loving arms. Just like the night we laid awake until dawn when you picked me up off the ground. I wish you would paint me by numbers in the soft light. Paint me with kisses, you can paint me with colors, but please no more numbers. I'm walking, crawling, feeling just like I can die for your love.
Charles Rivera here on Music on the Menu with a song called The Way I Want to Paint. And before that, Justin Mazer with a song called Cloudy Day from his new record, Controlled Burn. Justin has been our guest here for the entire hour this evening. We've been playing tracks from the Controlled Burn record as well as the new Discourse record. They were both released simultaneously last Friday. And some of the artists that we played here on the show throughout the program, Leroy Justice, Cabinet, Miz, Charles Rivera, very well-known artists in the area, and Justin has done work with all of them and played on all those tracks. Justin, share some of your thoughts on some of the musicians that you've worked with here in northeastern Pennsylvania. Obviously, you have a lot of camaraderie and friends and a lot of people that respect what you could bring to a record.
Well, for starters, you know, a lot of these relationships were formed at this point over a decade ago. And, you know, all of these people that have been featured on the show today, not only are they still good friends of mine, but they're still people that I could continue to make music with. And it's something that's special to me, kind of turning the corner around a decade in terms of looking back and being like, wow, I have real history and a musical connection with these people that transcends just, you know, playing a few shows with. Now that's like it's more of a family thing where, you know, Mike Miz, one of my favorite guitar players, one of my best friends. And, you know, all the bands here, Leroy Justice, Cabinet, Miz, and Charles, as I mentioned, as much as I love going into my own creative endeavors, I really love the role that an electric guitar can do in the context of a singer-songwriter song. You know, some of my favorite guitar players, such as Mike Campbell from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, who I should have mentioned earlier.
Oh, I love him.
And the way that they're able to find a place for guitar to sit in singer-songwriter world, I've been granted the opportunity to do that with many great songwriters, both from the area and beyond. And that is as important to me, and I get as much of a musical fulfillment from that as locking myself in a room for several months and recording a bunch of music.
Well, Justin, you're still a very young man at 31, and you've accomplished so much. You know, now you've released a couple of records, played on all these great records. You know, here in Northeastern Pennsylvania, you've been in Rolling Stone magazine, Relics magazine, Guitar Player magazine, and it's exciting for us here on the show and for your fans here in Northeastern Pennsylvania to see you step forward with these two great new releases. Where can people find these? I'm assuming they're on all the usual platforms for download or purchase?
Absolutely. Bandcamp, Spotify, iTunes, my own website, justinmazer.com. I even have playlists on YouTube of the album. So it should be pretty easy to find them if you get onto the web and start searching around.
And for those listening on the radio, that's Justin Mazer, M-A-Z-E-R, because I've known some people over the years that spell it with a U. So Justin Mazer, M-A-Z-E-R.com. Check it out, folks. Go check out the music and give a listen and dig a little even deeper than we were able to tonight to this terrific artist from Northeastern Pennsylvania. Justin, thanks so much for calling in. We appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
We're going to leave you now with another one from the Discourse record. This one's called Silver Lining from Justin Mazer. We'll catch you next week.